Especially in tongue, love and peace. Let's say thanks to the police all around, especially in tongue, love and peace. Let's say thanks to the police.
It is Monday and the TTPS is on now. This morning we welcome back Inspector Michelle Lewis. Good morning to you, Inspector.
Good morning to the both of you all. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
Compliments of the season and all that good stuff.
And to you as well, and to all your listening and viewing audience.
Now, Inspector, this is the season where everybody wants to go out and shop. Everybody wants to buy things, whether it's first hand, second hand, third hand. Everybody wants to make transactions. How can we be safe in this season making transactions?
It's also the season where you see scammers rising. And
the scammers, them there.
And so they prey on persons who are not doing due diligence and making a check because you're super excited during this Christmas season. So this morning, the TTPS wants to give some information, some tips of how shoppers, business owners, people who doing online purchases primarily or check-in to do those purchases can be safe and safeguard themselves against scammers, online fraud, right? So let me just say from the interim that identity theft is where someone steals your identity to fraudulently conduct some kind of transaction like loan or credit or something, using you, so impersonating you via online purchases.
Using
right?
your data.
Yes, it wouldn't be directly in person. So because usually in person you have to sign, the bank will have your signature and all those kind of things. So it really stems from that. Everything in relation to scamming stems from identity theft. And so this morning, through the TTPS Fraud Squad is where we would investigate any type of matters involving fraud, whether it's in person, Facebook Marketplace or otherwise, right? So we know we have seen already banking institutions, for example, the police credit union, the public bank, where false sites are being created online indicating that this is actually authentic.
Right.
We have seen it circulating for the public bank and we also saw it for the police credit union. So we want persons to pay particular attention to the email, the website, to ensure that it is actually authentic, because sometimes it's just one letter different, but you have to pay attention. And sometimes when you see the deal, you just get super excited and not do that double checking and triple checking to make sure. So one of the first things that you have to do is to look at the information that they're sending before you click that link and where you can share your information. Share your information meaning your full name, your email address, they may ask you for banking information and that kind of thing. Things that they can thief, your identity, and then of course your money.
Yeah,
That's primarily the purpose. So we have seen it taking place in the country already. So we want persons to be very aware of it. And so check and double check to make sure that it is really, really authentic. Another thing that we also see persons doing, or where identity theft can take place or scamming can take place, is where you utilize public Wi-Fi. So it's very easy through public Wi-Fi service where hackers can, there's a system that they use where once it's general, they are able to get your information with no trace of it being taken or who would have taken or stolen your identity. So if it is that, for example, you just see free Wi-Fi and you go in and you just add in whatever, we advise you against that. Try your best as fast, but we know that throughout Trinidad and Tobago, you don't have free Wi-Fi, you have to have it on your phone. Some areas do have it, like Arima, Borough, they have implemented in Arima, and certain areas.
Savannah have it too.
Right, certain areas, but as far as possible. And so we know that is a safe side because it's actually true and they would give you the information that you have to put in, right? So we want you to be very vigilant and pay attention to utilizing open or free Wi-Fi to access your information or to do anything, because sometimes you have your banking information. A lot of times people have the banking information on the phone and they just...
But what's interesting for me, Inspector, is even in open Wi-Fi circumstances, sometimes you have terms and conditions that you have to agree to, right? How important is it for us to be reading those terms and conditions every time we sign up for something?
Well, that's the trick. So sometimes, because it's so much, the contract is so long, a lot of times persons do not take the time to read it because they really just want the service right now, and so they have not really paid attention to it. Sometimes with the fraudulent ones, it doesn't really have all of that detail in relation to the company and all of that. So there are telltale signs that you really have to pay attention to recognize that this is not really a good site to be on, where you can go on and get free internet and that free Wi-Fi and that kind of thing.
Okay, so you mentioned the telltale signs, and one of the things you would have mentioned is, of course, looking at the URL particularly to see if there were any discrepancies, for want of a better expression. But what other telltale signs do you think or stand out to you the most that we should look for?
So sometimes there might be so there's usually an S at the end of where you have
HTTPS.
Yes, and that tells you that there's a security, a higher security component there, and so it is important that you pay attention to things like that.
And there's also often a icon, a lock icon as well next to it.
So it tells you that, this is safe, and you can...
Okay. And now, one of the things as we speak about fraudulent transactions, detection and protection, now I'm not sure if this would fall under this scheme of things, but it is something we do need to touch on, especially during the Christmas season. There is a rising concern when people are just tapping their cards, which, is so much easier to do now. You just walk in and tap and you go your way. I was at the gas station the other day and a gentleman was talking about the fact that he was worried that if he just tapped, you never knew if his data could be siphoned out by any particular machines that people have. Is that a possibility? And if so, what do we do to protect ourselves?
So if you are tapping at an established organization, you should be able to see whatever transaction you would have made at a particular establishment. I'm sure you check in your own.
Right.
And further to that, if something happens, then you'd know that you need to make a report to a banking institution that identity theft or some fraudulent incident or activity is taking place on your card. When you tap, it actually gives you a maximum that you can utilize. It is not that it cannot happen. Because if, for example, your vehicle is stolen and your card is in it, unless you call the bank, the person will be tapping wherever. Now, it's a way of tracing for the police, because wherever the person utilizes it, the police can go, and if there's a CCTV camera there, they can get that data, they can get that footage, and it will assist with the investigation. But if you do not report it to the bank will not know that it is not an authentic transaction, and so it will continue. So always check your banking information, your activity, to ensure that what you are seeing is actually what you are doing. Another thing also, as you mentioned in relation to fraud, is that sometimes persons are standing behind you or next to you and checking you and observing that you are checking in your information, putting in your information, that kind of thing. And it can also be stolen like that as well. We saw where there's the devices where persons can be next to you and they can scan your information and take it so that they can utilize it otherwise. So because of the increase of online usage for purchasing since COVID, you are seeing now an increase in scamming online. And so it is important that when persons are utilizing online to do any type of transaction, whether it's individual purchases or bulk purchasing for your company, that you really check to make sure that the information or the sites that you're going on are real. Even in relation to delivery of items, sometimes we would have experienced it. I have received fraudulent email from a delivery company indicating that, my address, there's something wrong with my address, so please enter, click on this link and that kind of thing.
You get that text message too.
Yes, so you have to, it's very subtle, very simple, but it is a season where, a lot of nonsense, a lot of folly, a lot of, things happen, and we really want the public to be very sensitive towards it. And where you see these incidents happening, to contact the Police Service Fraud Squad at the various numbers, the extensions, and let us know where we can do an investigation. You have worked hard for your money. We don't want anybody to thief it from you through fraudulent conversion or fraudulent means or otherwise.
So when it comes to the turnaround time, let's say that you are unfortunately the victim of some sort of online fraud and you make all the necessary reports, how long does it normally take to see your money returned?
So it really depends on the banking institution.
Okay.
So the TTPS, we will do the investigation in relation to the criminal matter, but you also have to so you would have done two things. You would have made a report to your banking institution as well as to the TTPS. And so we would also have to get that information officially from the bank to collaborate to be able to charge someone. So the bank would be able to, the bank usually would put the money on within their time frame, but that is not a TTPS matter per se.
So, Inspector, I had a fun actual experience with this a couple of years ago, right? Where my card was skimmed, and I got a message. It was Christmas Eve night saying that I just checked my balance, but I was at home. So I immediately was like, what? But by the time I pick up the phone to call the credit card center, I got another message saying that a certain amount had been withdrawn from my account, right? So there was fraud happening. So I called, I canceled the account. It was great. All that was fine.
Yes.
When the bank did reach out to me and they said, well, we have a picture of the person who did the transaction. And we took it to the TTPS. And because the person's face was blocked, it was like, well, yeah, we can't figure out who that is, so hard luck.
The bank, the police said?
They couldn't figure out who, they had no way of tracing this person, so that was it, full stop.
And was that the only place that they did any transaction?
I don't know. I didn't go and do any investigation. I'm not a detective. That's not my job.
No, what I'm asking is, because sometimes, so you said it was two transactions?
In the same location. They checked the account and then they took out money. And before they got a chance to take out any more money, I called and canceled.
Right.
Very good.
Because luckily the bank has a service where they send you an email with every transaction.
Yes.
Right? So I was able to cancel the account. But when I brought the information to the TTPS, it was met with
evidence.
It was met with, well, we can't do nothing about this. Where will we do?
Right. Because of the face. So therefore the cameras at the bank did not give the police sufficient evidence to be able to prosecute a person in relation to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the bank need better cameras for the police to be able to do the job.
Well, we cannot. We usually would rely on stakeholders to assist us.
Okay.
So if within the ATM space, because we can't.
The person hide their face, then it's all good.
The institution doesn't have sufficient cameras to be able to assist, then it poses a problem with us being able to identify the transaction. Because remember, you can see someone going through a camera on the street, but it doesn't mean that the person would have utilized that particular ATM machine to conduct the
picture was from the ATM. It was from the perspective of the ATM.
But without showing the face that the police
because the person was smart enough to know that to try and hide their face. But I feel like it doesn't really give me much faith in going back to the police. Like I would go to the bank and cancel my card.
Yeah.
But in terms of coming back to the TTPS, I don't have the faith to say, well, I know that they will do everything in their power because I don't have access to all the other cameras that may or may not have been around. You understand what I mean?
Yes, I do. So what I'm saying is, and it's good that you brought it up because it also says to the supporting agencies like the banks and that kind of thing that you need to put sufficient cameras that will be able to capture the face of the person for the TTPS to be able to prosecute someone. Because remember, if you get the CCTV footage from the street, it doesn't say that the person went to a particular ATM withdrawal machine and utilized. You can only see that from in the bank. And it's the bank to provide that information for the police. Understand what I'm saying? So unless the bank supports that and have that type of system in there to support us, we will not be able to say that this is the person that actually, unless that was the only person, but still.
All right.
So it is really, really important that we have that support from stakeholders.
It is. A lot of things are very important.
Yeah, it is because that's a private institution.
I understand what you're saying, Inspector.
We also want to let persons know that there are sometimes Christmas jobs that persons are looking at. And so online, you may look at, young person looking for a Christmas job and they tell you any information or kind of thing. Also be very careful in relation to that. So these are just some tips that we like to share. We know the time has run, so we really want to remind you. Contact the information if you see anything and continue to support the TTPS.
Thank you so much, Inspector, for joining us this morning. The TTPS every Monday on Now. And stay tuned because your birthdays are coming up right after the break.
Love